Have you been told that refinancing your mortgage to pay it off faster is the smartest financial move you can make before retirement? What if I told you that decision could be the biggest mistake of your financial life, one that might leave you broke when you need money the most? Right now, millions of people over 60 are sitting at their kitchen tables, staring at refinancing offers, feeling an overwhelming pressure to eliminate their debt before they retire. Financial institutions are flooding. Mailboxes with promises of lower payments and faster payoff schedules. The message is clear and relentless. Refinance now, eliminate your debt, and retire free. It sounds perfect, doesn't it? Almost too perfect. But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. Has this ever happened to you? You receive a refinancing offer in the mail promising to help you become debt-free faster. You feel this surge of excitement mixed with anxiety. Your parents always told you to never retire with debt. Every financial guru on television preaches the debt-free gospel. So you think, maybe this is it. Maybe this refinancing opportunity is exactly what I need to finally achieve that dream of owning my home outright. You start imagining the relief, the freedom, the peace of mind that comes with making that final payment. But here's what nobody is telling you about refinancing after 60. The rules of money completely change at this stage of your life. What worked brilliantly when you were 30 or 40 becomes financially dangerous at 65. Time is no longer your ally working through compound interest over decades. Every dollar you commit today has immediate and irreversible consequences that could haunt you for the rest of your retirement. Stay with me until the end, because what you're about to discover might completely transform how you think about debt, refinancing, and what true financial security actually means in retirement. The conventional wisdom that's been drilled into your head for decades might actually be setting you up for a financial disaster you won't see coming until it's too late. Think about this for a moment. When you refinance to eliminate debt faster, where does that money come from? It comes from your savings, your emergency fund, your liquid assets. The very money that gives you flexibility, security, and options suddenly disappears into the walls of your house. And once it's gone, once you've locked it away in home equity, getting it back becomes nearly impossible without taking out another loan, probably at worse terms than you have right now. What if everything you've been told about refinancing and debt elimination is completely backwards for someone over 60? What if the wealthy, the truly financially sophisticated retirees, are doing exactly the opposite of what mainstream advice recommends? The answer to these questions could mean the difference between a retirement filled with choices and flexibility or one constrained by decisions you can't undo. The transformation in your financial reality after 60 is something most people completely underestimate until it's too late. When you were younger, maybe in your 30s or early 40s, you had something incredibly valuable that you probably took for granted: time. If you made a financial mistake back then, if you lost money in a bad investment or overspent on something you shouldn't have, the solution was straightforward. You worked a few more years, you rebuilt your savings, you let compound interest perform its quiet magic over decades. The recovery window was wide open, and mistakes were merely expensive lessons rather than catastrophic events. But after 60, that window slams shut with brutal finality. Every financial decision you make now carries a weight that younger people simply cannot comprehend. When you refinance and drain your liquid savings to pay off debt faster, you're not just moving money around on a spreadsheet. You're making an irreversible choice that eliminates your ability to respond to emergencies, to capitalize on opportunities, or to simply enjoy the retirement you've spent decades working toward. The impact of getting this decision wrong isn't something you can fix by working a few extra years, because those years might not be available to you anymore. Now, I want to go even deeper into this, because there's a hidden truth about today's economic environment that changes everything about how we should think about debt after 60. We're living in a financial landscape that's radically different from any previous generation. Interest rates have been historically low for years. A mortgage at 3 or 4% isn't expensive debt, it's practically free money. When you factor in inflation and tax deductions, yet the advice we're all following was written in the 1980s when mortgage rates were 12, 15, even 18%. Following that outdated playbook in today's environment is like wearing a winter coat in the middle of summer, because that's what worked last season. If this resonated with you, subscribe to the channel. I create content that challenges conventional retirement advice with strategies that actually make sense today. Here's the revelation that sophisticated wealth managers understand but rarely share with ordinary retirees. Carrying strategic debt in a low-interest rate environment while inflation quietly erodes the real value of what you owe can actually be the smartest financial decision you make. When inflation runs at 4 or 5% and your mortgage costs 3%, your debt is literally paying itself down in real purchasing power terms. But when you refinance and throw all your cash at eliminating that debt, you're fighting against economic forces that were working in your favor. You're volunteering to lose purchasing power and flexibility for the psychological satisfaction of a zero balance. The journey toward understanding this requires a complete mindset shift. Behind the scenes of every wealthy retiree's financial strategy, you'll find something surprising. They maintain low-interest debt deliberately, not because they can't afford to pay it off, but because they understand opportunity cost in ways that conventional advice completely ignores. Every dollar locked into home equity is a dollar that can't generate investment returns, can't be accessed in emergencies, can't provide the flexibility that becomes absolutely critical as you age. The math has fundamentally changed. The economic reality has shifted, but the advice people are following remains frozen in a past that no longer exists. Write in the comments liquidity matters if this perspective is starting to change how you think about refinancing decisions after 60. Let me paint a picture that will make this crystal clear. Imagine you're 65 years old and you've just made what feels like the smartest financial decision of your life. You refinanced your mortgage with a plan to pay it off aggressively, and you wrote a check for $200,000 from your savings to eliminate that debt completely. The feeling is intoxicating. Finally, the house is yours, truly and completely yours. No more monthly payments hanging over your head. You sleep better that night than you have in years, feeling this profound sense of accomplishment and relief. Then 3 months later, your spouse comes home from a routine doctor's appointment with unexpected news. They need a medical procedure, something serious but treatable. Insurance will cover some of it, but there's a gap, a significant gap that requires immediate payment. Or maybe it's not medical. Maybe your roof starts leaking and needs complete replacement. Maybe your daughter calls in tears because she's facing foreclosure and desperately needs help. Whatever the emergency is, and trust me, emergencies always come, you suddenly realize something terrifying. All your money is locked inside the walls of your house. That $200,000 you felt so good about deploying 3 months ago is now completely inaccessible. This is the hidden truth about retirement that financial advisors rarely discuss with the brutal honesty it deserves. Liquidity isn't just a nice feature to have in your financial plan, it's survival. It's the difference between responding to life's inevitable crises with calm confidence versus panic and desperation. Having money you can actually touch, transfer, and deploy within hours or days matters infinitely more than the psychological satisfaction of owning something outright. Home equity doesn't pay for emergency room visits. It doesn't cover the cost of that specialist your regular insurance won't approve. It doesn't fix a broken furnace in January when temperatures drop below freezing. Behind the scenes of every financial catastrophe in retirement, you'll find the same pattern repeating endlessly. Someone made a decision that felt responsible and prudent at the time, usually eliminating debt through refinancing, and then life happened. The unexpected arrived right on schedule, as it always does, and suddenly they're trapped. They own their home completely. Their net worth looks impressive on paper, but they can't access the capital they need when they need it most. The journey from financial security to genuine crisis happens faster than most people can imagine, and it often starts with a refinancing decision that seemed so obviously correct. Now let me reveal something that might shock you about how truly wealthy people think about debt and refinancing. And I'm not talking about people who simply look wealthy with nice cars and big houses. I'm talking about individuals with genuine sustainable wealth who understand money at a level most people never reach. These people never rush to eliminate low-interest debt through aggressive refinancing strategies. Never. And it's not because they're reckless or irresponsible. It's because they understand something fundamental about opportunity cost that most financial advice completely ignores. Every dollar you commit to one purpose is simultaneously a dollar you cannot use for anything else. When you take $50,000 or $100,000 or $200,000 and lock it into home equity through refinancing and rapid payoff, you're not just eliminating debt. You're choosing to not invest that money where it could generate returns. You're choosing to not have it available for opportunities that might present themselves. You're choosing to sacrifice flexibility for the illusion of security. The transformation in thinking happens when you realize that the wealthy maintain optionality above almost everything else, because flexibility in how and when you deploy capital is often more valuable than any single financial outcome. Comment flexibility over elimination. If you're beginning to see why keeping your options open might matter more than aggressive debt payoff strategies, there's a concept in finance that sounds technical but is actually beautifully simple once you understand it. Opportunity cost. Every time you make a financial decision, you're not just choosing what to do with your money, you're simultaneously choosing what not to do with it. When you take $50,000 and throw it at refinancing to eliminate your mortgage faster, that money disappears from your accessible accounts. Gone. Converted into home equity that you can't touch without jumping through hoops. But here's what nobody tells you about that decision. That same $50,000 could have been working for you in completely different ways. Imagine putting that money into a diversified portfolio of dividend-paying stocks, companies that send you checks every quarter simply for owning their shares. Or consider high-yield savings accounts that are currently paying interest rates higher than what many mortgages cost. You could literally be earning more on your savings than you're paying on your debt. The transformation in your financial position would be profound. Instead of locking away your capital where you can't reach it, you'd be generating income streams that provide both growth and accessibility. But the moment you refinance and eliminate that debt aggressively, you forfeit all those possibilities forever. The journey toward financial wisdom after 60 requires asking yourself a fundamental question. What is money actually for at this stage of your life? You've spent decades accumulating it, saving it, worrying about it, and now you're being told by conventional advice to lock it away in home equity to achieve some arbitrary goal that made perfect sense in 1985 but might be completely wrong for your situation today. Think about this carefully. If you're receiving Social Security benefits, if you have a pension, if annuities are providing guaranteed income every single month, you already have built-in coverage for your debt payments. Those checks arrive like clockwork, whether you owe money or not. So why would you drain your liquid savings, your emergency fund, your opportunity capital, your flexibility, just to eliminate debt that your guaranteed income stream can easily service? The math doesn't support it. The strategy doesn't support it. The only thing supporting this decision is outdated conventional wisdom and the psychological satisfaction of seeing a zero balance. But psychological satisfaction that leaves you financially vulnerable isn't satisfaction at all. It's a trap disguised as responsibility. Behind the scenes of every genuinely secure retirement, you'll find people who understand this critical distinction. Being debt-free but cash-poor isn't freedom. It's fragility wearing the mask of financial responsibility. Real security comes from maintaining accessible resources while managing your obligations strategically. When you have liquid assets sitting in accounts you can access immediately, you have power. You have options. You can respond to emergencies without panic. You can take advantage of opportunities without scrambling. You can help family members who need assistance without having to explain why. All your money is locked in your house. The revelation that changes everything is recognizing that elimination isn't always the answer. Sometimes the smartest move is strategic management. Keep the low-interest debt that's costing you almost nothing in real terms after you factor in inflation and tax deductions. Maintain your liquid reserves that give you breathing room and choices. Let your guaranteed income cover your predictable obligations while your accessible capital provides the flexibility that becomes absolutely critical as you age. This isn't irresponsible. This is sophisticated financial engineering designed specifically for the realities you face after 60. The impact of understanding this principle extends far beyond simple mathematics. It affects how you sleep at night, knowing you have resources available if something unexpected happens. It influences how you interact with your family, secure in the knowledge that you can help if needed without jeopardizing your own stability. It shapes your entire retirement experience, transforming it from a period of anxious constraint into one of confident flexibility. Write opportunity cost matters in the comments if you're realizing that where you put your money might be more important than whether you have a mortgage payment. There's an economic phenomenon happening right now that most people are fighting against without even realizing it, and it's costing them hundreds of thousands of dollars over the course of their retirement. We're living through a period where inflation is quietly, invisibly working in your favor, if you understand how to position yourself correctly. But conventional advice is telling you to do exactly the opposite of what would benefit you most. Let me explain what I mean. If you're carrying a mortgage at 3 or 4% interest and inflation is running at 4, 5, or even 6%, something remarkable is happening to your debt. It's shrinking. Not on paper. The balance might look the same, but in real purchasing power terms, your debt is literally getting cheaper every single year. The dollars you borrowed 5 years ago were worth more than the dollars you're using to pay it back today. That's not theory or some abstract financial concept. That's mathematical reality working silently in your favor while you sleep. But here's where the trap reveals itself. When you refinance and take a lump sum from your savings to aggressively pay off that 3% loan in an environment where inflation is higher than your interest rate, you're essentially volunteering to lose purchasing power. Think about what's really happening in that transaction. You're taking valuable, flexible dollars that you can deploy anywhere for anything at any time, and you're converting them into frozen equity locked inside your house. You're trading the most valuable form of wealth, liquid accessible capital, for the elimination of debt that inflation was already eroding on your behalf. The transformation in understanding comes when you stop viewing inflation as this terrifying economic monster and start recognizing it as a force that can work for you when you position yourself strategically. Every year that inflation runs higher than your mortgage rate is a year where you're effectively being paid to carry that debt. But the moment you refinance and eliminate it using your cash reserves, you lose that advantage forever. You've fought against the current instead of letting it carry you downstream. Now let me reveal something about refinancing decisions that nobody wants to talk about because it makes people deeply uncomfortable. The irreversibility of the choice. Once you refinance and use those proceeds to pay off your mortgage in full, once you click that button or sign that paperwork, that decision cannot be undone. The money vanishes from your accessible accounts instantly. It's been converted into home equity, which sounds impressive and secure in theory, until you actually need cash for something real. Imagine this scenario playing out, because it happens every single day to retirees across the country. You refinance, you eliminate your mortgage, you feel fantastic about it for exactly 3 months. Then something unexpected happens. Your car needs major repairs. Your grandchild needs help with college expenses. You want to take advantage of an investment opportunity that requires immediate capital. Or worst of all, a medical emergency strikes and insurance doesn't cover everything. Suddenly you need money, real money you can spend right now, and you realize with growing horror that it's all locked inside your house. You can't call your mortgage company and say, "Hey, remember that $100,000 I paid you last quarter? I need 20,000 of it back for an emergency." It doesn't work that way. You'd have to apply for a home equity loan or line of credit, go through the entire underwriting process again, probably at worse interest rates than you had before, definitely with fees attached. And all of this assumes you even qualify based on your retirement income. The journey from confident refinancing decision to desperate scramble for liquidity can happen in weeks, and the impact on your quality of life and peace of mind is devastating. Behind the scenes of what looks like responsible financial planning is often a ticking time bomb. Being house rich and cash poor isn't just uncomfortable or inconvenient. It's genuinely dangerous after 60, when your ability to generate new income is severely limited and life's emergencies don't wait for convenient timing. Put irreversible decision in the comments if you're starting to understand why locking away your flexibility might be far more dangerous than keeping a manageable mortgage. The reality of what happens after you refinance and drain your accounts hits different people at different times, but it always hits eventually. You might feel invincible for a few months, riding that psychological high of being debt-free. Then life reminds you that it doesn't care about your financial planning. Something breaks, someone needs help, an opportunity presents itself, and you reach for money that's no longer there. The journey from confidence to crisis can be shockingly fast, and the transformation is brutal because there's no easy path back. Let's talk about what being house rich and cash poor actually means in practical terms. Because it's not just some abstract financial concept, it affects everything. Your autonomy disappears. When your daughter calls because she's in trouble, you can't help her immediately. When your grandson gets accepted to his dream college but needs financial assistance, you have to explain that all your money is locked in your house. When you see your friends taking trips and enjoying experiences, you're stuck because accessing your wealth would require months of paperwork and approvals. The impact extends far beyond simple mathematics into the quality and dignity of how you live every single remaining day. Behind the scenes of seemingly responsible financial decisions is often a prison of your own making. You own your home completely. Your net worth looks impressive when calculated on paper, but you can't actually do anything with that wealth without extraordinary effort and cost. You've traded flexibility for the illusion of security, and the realization usually comes too late to reverse course without significant damage. This is the hidden truth that financial institutions don't emphasize when they're pitching refinancing opportunities, because their incentive is the transaction, not your long-term well-being. Now here's something that should make you pause and question everything you've been told about debt elimination and refinancing. Every single financial advisor, every retirement planning expert, every personal finance guru will tell you with absolute certainty that you must maintain an emergency fund. They'll insist you need 6 months to 2 years of living expenses sitting in accessible accounts. This advice is universal, it's gospel, it's the foundation of financial security. And they're absolutely right. Having liquid reserves for unexpected situations is not optional, it's essential for survival. But then, and this is where the contradiction becomes almost comical, if it weren't so damaging, many of those exact same advisors will turn around and encourage you to drain that emergency fund, plus all your other savings, through aggressive refinancing to achieve some symbolic debt-free status. They'll congratulate you for taking every dollar you have and converting it into home equity. The staggering inconsistency should make you question the entire framework of advice you're receiving. How can emergency funds be simultaneously critical and expendable? How can liquidity be both essential and sacrificable? The revelation comes when you realize that much of mainstream financial advice is filled with contradictions, because it's designed for average situations and ignores the specific realities of life after 60. What worked at 40 doesn't work at 65. What makes sense when you have decades ahead doesn't make sense when time is your most limited resource. The mindset shift required is understanding that generic advice, even when it comes from credible sources, might be completely wrong for your particular circumstances. The transformation in thinking happens when you start prioritizing what actually matters. Would you rather have the psychological satisfaction of a paid-off house and depleted savings, or would you rather maintain accessible resources that give you choices and security? Would you rather follow conventional wisdom and hope nothing goes wrong? Or would you rather position yourself to handle whatever life throws at you with confidence and flexibility? These aren't rhetorical questions. They're the fundamental choices that will determine whether your retirement is characterized by freedom or constraint. Comment contradiction noticed if you're seeing how the same advice that tells you to save also tells you to spend everything on debt elimination. There's a dimension to this refinancing decision that most people completely overlook because it involves taxes, and taxes are complicated and boring until you realize how much money is actually at stake. Mortgage interest is tax deductible. Every single dollar you pay in mortgage interest reduces your taxable income. For retirees who find themselves in higher tax brackets, perhaps because of required minimum distributions from retirement accounts, pension income, or investment gains, this deduction can be worth thousands of dollars annually. But when you refinance aggressively and eliminate your mortgage using your savings, you simultaneously eliminate that tax benefit. The transformation in your tax situation can be dramatic and expensive. Suddenly you're paying significantly more to the IRS every single year because you lost that mortgage interest deduction. Nobody mentions this when they're congratulating you for becoming debt-free. The hidden truth is that maintaining strategic debt can actually reduce your tax burden substantially, but conventional wisdom treats all debt elimination as automatically positive without considering the tax consequences. The journey toward sophisticated financial planning involves looking at the complete picture, not just the emotional satisfaction of a zero balance. Now let me reveal something that sounds almost too good to be true, but is absolutely legitimate when you understand the mathematics. Sometimes, when you factor in both the tax advantages of mortgage interest deductions and the inflation effect we discussed earlier, the true cost of carrying that debt becomes negative. You're literally being paid to borrow money. Think about that for a moment. You have a 3% mortgage, inflation is running at 5%, and you're getting a tax deduction on the interest. The real cost of that debt after accounting for these factors might be negative 2 or 3%. You're coming out ahead by maintaining the debt rather than eliminating it. These are the calculations that sophisticated financial planners consider when working with high net worth clients. But conventional wisdom being peddled to everyday retirees completely ignores these nuances. Behind the scenes of every wealthy person's financial strategy, you'll find careful analysis of effective borrowing costs, tax optimization strategies, and opportunity cost evaluation. They're playing a different game entirely, one where debt isn't the enemy, but rather a tool to be deployed strategically when the numbers work in your favor. But there's an even more powerful concept that changes everything about whether you should refinance to eliminate debt quickly: investment arbitrage. The word sounds technical, but the principle is beautifully simple. Imagine you have $100,000 sitting in savings and a mortgage at 4% interest. Conventional thinking screams at you to refinance and pay off that loan immediately. Every fiber of traditional advice tells you this is the responsible move. But what if you kept that mortgage and instead invested that $100,000 in a diversified portfolio that historically earns 7 or 8% annually? The mathematics aren't complicated. You're paying 4% on one side while earning 7 or 8% on the other. That spread, that difference between what you're paying and what you're earning, represents real wealth accumulation that you forfeit completely the moment you eliminate the debt. Over 10 or 15 years, that spread compounds into enormous amounts of money, but you'll never see a penny of it if you follow conventional advice and refinance to pay everything off as fast as possible. The mindset shift required here is profound. Instead of viewing debt as this terrible burden that must be eliminated at all costs, you start recognizing it as one side of an equation where the other side might be generating significantly more value. The impact on your net worth over the course of your retirement can be hundreds of thousands of dollars, but only if you're willing to think differently than conventional wisdom prescribes. Write arbitrage opportunity in the comments if you're realizing that the spread between borrowing costs and investment returns might be more important than having a zero balance. Now, I can hear the objections forming in your mind right now. You're thinking that investment returns aren't guaranteed. You're absolutely right, they're not. Markets go up and down, there's volatility, there's risk. But here's the uncomfortable truth that nobody wants to say out loud. Neither is living long enough to fully enjoy that paid-off house you sacrificed. Everything to own. We're all taking calculated risks every single day simply by being alive. The question has never been whether to take risks. The real question is, which risks are actually worth taking and which ones are we accepting without even realizing it? The risk of maintaining strategic debt while preserving liquid assets is visible and measurable. You can calculate it, monitor it, adjust it. But the risk of draining all your savings through aggressive refinancing and then running out of money while you're still alive, that risk is invisible until it's too late to fix. The risk of being unable to access your wealth when you desperately need it because it's all locked in home equity, that's a risk most people never consider until they're trapped by it. The transformation in perspective happens when you realize that eliminating all visible risk often creates far more dangerous, invisible risks that can devastate your retirement. Behind the scenes of successful retirement planning is a strategy that prioritizes optionality above almost everything else. Instead of refinancing and throwing all your resources at debt elimination, you make your minimum payments on that low-interest mortgage. Those payments are manageable, predictable, and easily covered by your guaranteed income sources. Meanwhile, you maximize your liquid savings and investment accounts. You keep your powder dry, as they say in military strategy. You maintain your ability to maneuver and respond. The SGI Revelation that changes everything is understanding that you can always decide to pay off debt later if circumstances change, if you inherit money, if your investment portfolio grows beyond your wildest expectations, or if you simply change your mind. That option remains available to you indefinitely, but once you refinance and pay everything off, once that money vanishes into home equity, you cannot reverse that decision without enormous cost, effort, and time. The door swings one way only, and most people don't realize that until they're desperately trying to push it back open from the wrong side. This brings us to perhaps the most important concept in all of retirement planning, something that's rarely discussed but matters more than any other single factor. Flexibility, not your net worth, not your debt-to-income ratio, not even your total assets. Flexibility is the hidden currency of retirement, and it's worth more than almost any other financial metric you can measure. The impact of maintaining flexibility reverberates through every aspect of your retirement experience. When you have accessible capital sitting in accounts you can tap within days, you possess something that can't be quantified on a balance sheet, but matters enormously in real life. You have the power to respond to whatever life throws at you. Medical emergency? You handle it without panic. Family member needs help? You provide it without scrambling. Investment opportunity presents itself. You can participate. Dream trip becomes available? You can say yes. The journey through retirement is unpredictable and often challenging, but flexibility gives you the tools to navigate successfully, regardless of what happens. Without that flexibility, without liquid, accessible resources, you're forced into positions that destroy wealth and create stress. You liquidate investments at the worst possible times because you have no choice. You take on expensive new debt in emergencies because you can't access the equity you created. You turn down opportunities and deny yourself experiences because everything you own is frozen in place. The transformation from a secure retirement to a constrained one often begins with a single refinancing decision that seemed so obviously correct at the time. Comment flexibility matters most if you're understanding that responsive capability might be more valuable than any balance sheet number. There's something deeply uncomfortable that we need to discuss about estate planning and inheritance because it shapes refinancing decisions in ways most people never consciously acknowledge. We've been culturally conditioned to believe that dying with any debt is somehow shameful, that we're failing our children if we don't leave everything completely paid off and wrapped up with a perfect bow. But the reality behind the scenes of estate settlement is completely different from what most people imagine. If you pass away with remaining mortgage debt, your estate handles it routinely. The proceeds from asset sales or other estate funds simply settle the obligation. Your heirs aren't personally liable. They don't inherit your debt. It's processed administratively as part of standard estate administration. So the question you need to ask yourself isn't whether you can leave a mortgage-free house. The real question is this: would you rather spend your 70s and 80s living a severely constrained lifestyle, denying yourself experiences and joy, sacrificing time with family and opportunities to create memories, all to leave your children a slightly larger inheritance? Or would you rather actually live your retirement, using your resources to enjoy the years you have left, helping your family while you're around to see the impact, trusting that your estate will be handled properly when the time inevitably comes? The transformation in thinking happens when you realize that being the richest person in the cemetery has never been anyone's genuine goal once they actually sit down and think about what matters. Your children, if you've raised them well, would almost certainly prefer to inherit a moderately smaller estate and have vibrant memories of parents who traveled, who were generous, who showed up for important moments, who lived fully and joyfully. Those memories are worth infinitely more than an extra $50,000 or $100,000 in home equity. What we're really exploring here is a fundamental shift in how we think about money's purpose in the final third of our lives. Money isn't some abstract scorecard to be maximized on paper. It's a tool for creating the life you want while you still can. The journey toward wisdom involves recognizing that your relationship with money needs to evolve as you age. Accumulation was appropriate when you were building wealth, but after 60, strategic deployment becomes far more important than continued accumulation. The impact of understanding this principle extends far beyond finances into the quality and meaning of how you spend your remaining time. Now let me introduce you to a financial tool that gets terrible reputation because of outdated stigma and horror stories from decades ago, but can actually be brilliantly strategic when used correctly. If you're over 62 and own your home, a reverse mortgage can completely change your financial picture in ways that traditional refinancing never could. Instead of refinancing and draining your savings, account to eliminate debt faster. Imagine tapping into your home equity while staying right where you are, living in the house you love, without making a single monthly payment. The repayment gets deferred until you decide to sell or until your estate settles things after you pass. The revelation here is profound. You can convert illiquid equity into usable cash flow without sacrificing your living situation and without the burden of monthly payments. Yet people reject this option immediately because of lingering stigma from poorly structured deals in the past. The modern reverse mortgage landscape is heavily regulated and can be an incredibly sophisticated move for the right situation. Behind the scenes, financially savvy retirees are using these instruments strategically to maintain liquidity and lifestyle, without the constraints that traditional mortgages or aggressive refinancing would create. The mindset shift required is recognizing that different stages of life require different financial tools. What worked at 40 doesn't work at 70. What made sense during accumulation years makes no sense during distribution years. The transformation happens when you stop following generic rules and start making strategic decisions based on your actual circumstances and goals. Write "living fully now" in the comments if you're reconsidering whether leaving the largest possible inheritance is worth sacrificing your quality of life today. Let me tell you what your actual financial threat is in retirement, because it's not what conventional wisdom has convinced you to worry about. Your mortgage is not your enemy, not even close. The real predator lurking in your financial future, waiting to devastate everything you've built, is healthcare costs. Medicare covers a substantial amount, and we're fortunate to have it, but the gaps in coverage can be absolutely staggering. A serious illness that requires specialized treatment, an extended hospital stay with complications, the need for long-term care or round-the-clock assistance. These expenses can obliterate a lifetime of careful savings in months, not years. Long-term care facilities routinely cost $8,000 to $10,000 per month, and most people will need some form of extended care before they die. This is the hidden truth that nobody wants to discuss at retirement parties or financial planning seminars because it's uncomfortable and scary. But ignoring it doesn't make it go away. Behind the scenes of every comfortable retirement is someone who planned for healthcare contingencies, who maintained liquid reserves specifically for medical emergencies, who understood that preserving accessible capital for health-related expenses is exponentially more important than achieving some symbolic debt-free status. The impact of this realization should reshape your entire approach to refinancing decisions. Imagine you drain your liquid savings through aggressive refinancing to pay off that 3% mortgage, feeling proud and accomplished. Then 18 months later, your spouse needs specialized medical care that insurance only partially covers, or you require round-the-clock nursing assistance, or a medical condition emerges that demands immediate and expensive intervention. Where does that money come from? You can't write a check to a nursing home using home equity. You can't pay for prescription medications or medical equipment with the satisfaction of owning your house. Outright, the journey toward genuine financial security means protecting yourself against the risks that actually matter, not the risks that simply feel uncomfortable because of cultural conditioning. The transformation in perspective happens when you recognize that maintaining liquidity for healthcare contingencies is not optional. It's the difference between receiving the care you need with dignity versus making desperate compromises that affect your health and quality of life. Now let me explain something about risk that most people misunderstand completely, especially how it changes as you age. When you were 30 years old and you made a financial mistake, when you lost money in a bad investment or overspent on something foolish, the solution was straightforward and accessible. You worked longer, you picked up extra shifts, you delayed retirement by a few years, you rebuilt your savings through continued earning. Time was your ally, and mistakes were expensive lessons, but not permanent catastrophes. But after 60, when your earning years are largely behind you, when your capacity to generate new income is severely limited or completely gone, losing money doesn't mean working longer. It means permanent lifestyle reduction. It means cutting back on things you've been looking forward to for decades. It means telling your grandchildren you can't help with college after all. It means choosing between medications and groceries. The revelation that changes everything is understanding that your risk tolerance hasn't just changed as you've aged. It's fundamentally inverted from what it was during your accumulation years. The mindset shift required here is profound. Maintaining low-interest debt while preserving substantial cash reserves is actually the lower risk position after 60. Being illiquid, having all your wealth locked in assets you can't easily access, is far more dangerous than carrying manageable debt. Illiquidity removes your ability to respond, to pivot, to handle the unexpected. You become financially brittle, and brittleness in retirement is how people with impressive net worth on paper end up in genuinely difficult situations in real life. Comment healthcare reserves matter if you're realizing that protecting against medical costs might be more important than eliminating a low-interest mortgage. Behind the scenes of seemingly successful retirements, you'll often find people who made what looked like all the right decisions on paper but are now trapped by those very decisions. They own their homes completely, their net worth calculations look impressive, but they can't actually do anything without extraordinary effort. The transformation from security to vulnerability happened gradually, so slowly that they didn't notice until the damage was irreversible. What they thought was financial responsibility turned out to be financial rigidity, and rigidity after 60 is how comfortable retirements turn into constrained existences. The journey toward genuine wisdom requires asking yourself a question that might make you uncomfortable. What was the point of all those years of hard work? Why did you sacrifice weekends and delay gratification and save diligently and build your nest egg in the first place? It wasn't so you could spend your 60s and 70s obsessing over account balances and denying yourself experiences just to see a zero next to your mortgage line. It wasn't so you could die with the most impressive net worth calculation your estate attorney had ever seen. You've earned the right to actually live, not just exist in some austere holding pattern waiting for permission that will never come. If you're carrying stable debt at reasonable rates and you have the means to manage it comfortably with your guaranteed income streams, the transformation that needs to happen isn't financial, it's psychological. You need to give yourself permission to use your money while you can still appreciate it, while your body still cooperates, while the people you love are still around to share experiences with you. The hidden truth that nobody wants to acknowledge directly is that experiences have expiration dates. Your health and mobility are declining assets, whether you choose to face that reality or not. Travel while your knees still work and you can navigate airport terminals without assistance. Visit those places you've been talking about for 20 years before walking becomes too painful or exhausting. Help your grandchildren with their education or their first home purchase while you're around to see the impact it makes in their lives, to witness their gratitude, to be part of their journey. Behind every regret in retirement is someone who waited too long, who deferred life until the window closed without warning. There are 70-year-olds hiking mountains and taking cooking classes in foreign countries. There are also 70-year-olds who can barely walk to their mailbox, whose world has shrunk to the dimensions of their living room. Time isn't the only factor determining which group you'll be in, but it's a factor you absolutely cannot negotiate with or postpone indefinitely. The impact of understanding this principle should be immediate and visceral. Every year you spend hoarding money, every experience you deny yourself to achieve some arbitrary financial goal, every opportunity you pass up because conventional wisdom says you should pay off debt first. These aren't conservative choices. They're gambles that you'll have unlimited time later. But the revelation that should shake you is recognizing that later isn't guaranteed. The only moment you actually control is right now. The mindset shift required is profound and often difficult because we've been conditioned for decades to prioritize accumulation over experience, to delay gratification indefinitely, to treat frugality as the highest virtue. But after 60, different virtues matter more. Living fully while you can, creating memories with people you love, using your resources for their intended purpose, which is supporting the life you want to live, not decorating a balance sheet that you'll never get to enjoy. The transformation happens when you stop viewing your financial resources as something to be preserved at all costs and start recognizing them as tools for creating the retirement experience you actually want, rather than the one conventional wisdom prescribes. Right experiences expire if you're understanding that waiting too long means missing opportunities that won't come back. There's a financial risk that professional planners whisper about in their offices, but most retirees never adequately prepare for, and it's absolutely devastating when it strikes. The technical term is sequence of returns risk, but let me translate that into real-world consequences. Imagine you refinance and use all your available cash to eliminate your mortgage completely. You feel fantastic about it. 6 months pass, then the market crashes 30 or 40% as markets periodically do. Suddenly, you need money for living expenses because your portfolio just took a massive hit and you need to supplement your income until things recover. But here's where the nightmare begins. Your portfolio is down significantly and you have no liquid reserves because you spent everything paying off debt. Now you're forced to sell investments at the absolute worst possible time, when prices are depressed and losses are maximized. You're locking in those losses permanently, converting temporary market declines into realized losses that your portfolio will never recover from. The impact on your long-term financial security is catastrophic, and it all started with a refinancing decision that seemed so obviously responsible just months earlier. The transformation from confident retiree to desperate seller happens in weeks, and the damage compounds over years. Behind the scenes of every retirement portfolio that failed to last, you'll often find this exact pattern. Someone eliminated their cash cushion through aggressive debt payoff, then faced forced liquidations during market downturns. The journey from security to crisis was paved with decisions that conventional wisdom enthusiastically endorsed. Now let me address something critical that should fundamentally change how you think about the word debt.